Okay, so let's jump into crypto, shall we? More specifically, Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Sounds good.
You sent over some really interesting articles comparing the two, and it seems like everyone's trying to figure out which one's going to come out on top.
Yeah, it's an interesting rivalry for sure. I
Mm.
mean, they both use blockchain technology, but they have totally different goals.
Right.
It's like comparing apples and oranges almost.
Yeah, exactly. So, for those of us trying to wrap our heads around all of this, where should we even begin?
Well, I think any good origin story starts at the beginning, right?
Right.
So Bitcoin kind of kicked off this whole cryptocurrency craze way back in 2009,
Okay.
created by the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto,
Right.
whose true identity, by the way, is still unknown to this day.
Adding to the intrigue.
Right.
And then Ethereum bursts onto the scene in 2015.
Yeah, that's right. And the mind behind Ethereum is Vitalik Buterin.
Yeah.
And he had a much broader vision, I think.
Okay.
He wasn't just thinking about digital currency. He saw blockchain's potential to completely change how we interact with the internet.
So Bitcoin is often compared to digital gold, right? A store of value.
All right.
And Ethereum is more like a platform for building like a new internet.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think Bitcoin is really all about scarcity and security,
Okay.
like a digital vault.
Right.
Whereas Ethereum is all about building these decentralized applications, or what they call DAT apps.
Okay.
You can kind of think of it as a world computer where anyone can create and run their own programs
Wow.
without needing permission from any central authority.
Okay, so that's the big picture difference. But practically speaking, I mean, what does this mean for just everyday users? I know some of your articles discuss like transaction speeds and fees.
Yeah, this is where things get interesting.
Okay.
One of the most common complaints about Bitcoin is that the transactions can be really slow and expensive.
Oh, really?
And this is partly due to its block size limit,
Okay.
which restricts how many transactions can be processed at once. It's like trying to cram everyone onto a single bus during rush hour.
And then what is Ethereum? Is it more like a high-speed train?
More like a fleet of self-driving cars, I would say.
Okay.
Ethereum's approach is way more flexible
Okay.
and can handle a much higher transaction volume. So generally, that's going to lead to faster confirmations and lower fees.
So that's a win for Ethereum then.
In that regard, yes.
Your articles also mentioned proof of work and proof of stake, which sound very technical.
These are what they call consensus mechanisms.
Okay.
And basically, they're the rules that ensure everyone agrees on which transactions are valid
Gotcha.
and can be added to the blockchain.
Okay.
Bitcoin relies on this proof of work,
Right.
which involves these miners competing to solve complex mathematical problems.
So like a massive energy-intensive Sudoku competition.
Yeah, essentially. And that's where the environmental concerns come in.
Right.
This computational arms race uses a tremendous amount of electricity.
And does Ethereum use the same system?
So Ethereum actually made a huge shift in 2022.
Okay.
They moved from proof of work to proof of stake.
Got it.
So instead of miners solving puzzles, you now have these validators who stake their ETH to secure the network.
Okay.
And this is far more energy efficient, although it does raise some new questions
Such as us.
about how decentralized and secure the network truly is.
So it sounds like each approach has its own trade-offs then.
Yeah, I think so.
But going back to Ethereum and this whole dApp thing,
Yeah.
what exactly are these decentralized applications and what makes them so special?
Well, think about how much of our lives these days are mediated by these centralized platforms and companies, right?
Right.
Everything from social media to banking to shopping is controlled by a handful of powerful entities.
It's true.
dApps aim to change all that.
Okay.
They want to create applications that are owned and governed by the users themselves.
So shifting the control from corporations to individuals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just control.
Okay.
dApps can offer increased transparency, security, and resistance to censorship.
Right.
Let's take decentralized finance, or DeFi, for an example. Imagine being able to borrow, lend, and earn interest on your crypto without going through a traditional bank.
That sounds incredibly empowering, but also potentially risky?
Absolutely. Like any new technology, there are definitely risks and challenges to consider.
Of course.
That's why it's so crucial to understand how these systems work
Yeah.
and what safeguards are in place.
So what else can these dApps do? I know your articles mention NFTs and even like a whole new vision for the internet called Web3.
Oh, the possibilities are really immense.
Yeah.
NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, are digital assets that represent ownership of these unique items,
Okay.
like digital art, music, or even virtual real estate.
That's what everyone's talking about.
Right. And they're just one example of how blockchain technology is disrupting these creative industries
Okay.
and redefining how we think about ownership and value in the digital world.
Interesting.
And then you have Web3,
Yeah.
which aims to build a more decentralized and user-centric internet.
So reclaiming ownership of our data and online experiences?
Precisely. It's still early days.
Right.
But Web3 has the potential to fundamentally change how we interact with the internet.
It's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It is.
It's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
And you actually provide some articles that touch on investing in both Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah.
But before we even go there,
Let's be very clear. We are not offering any financial advice.
of course not.
Investing in cryptocurrencies carries inherent risks, and it's absolutely vital to do your own research
Right.
and understand the market dynamics before making any decisions.
I completely agree. But for those who are curious, what are like the key things to consider when looking at Bitcoin versus Ethereum as potential investments?
Well, if you think back to that digital gold analogy, Bitcoin is often seen as the more stable, established asset.
Okay.
It's like investing in a blue chip stock with a proven track record.
Gotcha.
But of course, past performance is not indicative of future results.
Right.
And Bitcoin's price can still be quite volatile.
And what about Ethereum?
Ethereum is often seen as that higher growth, but potentially riskier option. Its value is really tied to the success of its DApp ecosystem.
Gotcha.
So if Web3 takes off and dApps become mainstream, Ethereum could see significant appreciation.
Okay.
However, it's also a much more complex and evolving platform, which adds to its risk profile.
So Bitcoin is like the steady tortoise and Ethereum's the hare.
That's one way to look at it.
Okay.
Ultimately, the best investment choice depends on your individual risk tolerance, your investment goals, and your belief in the long-term potential of each platform.
This has been an incredible overview,
Thank you.
but we've barely scratched the surface.
We've only just begun our deep dive.
There's still so much more to explore.
Exactly.
Let's take a short break and come back for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into these complexities and possibilities of Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Sounds great. Welcome back to our deep dive into Bitcoin and Ethereum.
I'm ready to go even deeper.
Mhm.
Last time we talked about their different purposes and the tech behind them.
Right.
But you also sent over some articles that raised concerns about Bitcoin's environmental impact.
Yes. The energy consumption of Bitcoin mining is definitely a hot topic.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand both sides of the debate, I think.
So break it down for us. What are the main arguments?
Well, on the one hand, you have those who argue that Bitcoin's reliance on proof of work with all those energy-hungry mining computers
Right.
contributes significantly to carbon emissions.
Okay.
And they say it's just not sustainable in the long run.
Especially given the urgent need to address climate change.
Precisely. They point to the fact that a single Bitcoin transaction
Wow.
can consume as much energy as an average household uses in weeks.
That's a stark comparison.
It is. What do Bitcoin proponents say in response to this?
Yeah. What do they say?
Well, they often argue that the industry is moving towards renewable energy sources.
Okay.
They highlight the increasing use of solar, wind, and hydropower for mining operations,
Okay.
especially in regions with abundant clean energy.
So they're essentially saying that Bitcoin can become greener over time.
Yeah, and they also emphasize the potential benefits of Bitcoin, particularly for people in countries with unstable economies or limited access to traditional financial services.
Right.
They argue that Bitcoin can provide financial inclusion and empowerment.
So it's a very complex issue with valid points on both sides.
It is.
It seems like the future of Bitcoin's environmental impact will really depend on the industry's ability to transition to these cleaner energy sources.
I agree. It's definitely something to watch closely. But for now, let's shift gears a bit and explore another aspect you brought up.
Okay.
This whole concept of DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations.
Yes. The articles you send describe them as these revolutionary new ways of organizing and governing ourselves.
Right.
But I have to admit, I'm still a little fuzzy on what they actually are.
Sure. So think of it this way. What if you could create an organization without the traditional hierarchies, the bureaucracy, or that centralized control?
Okay.
That's the essence of a DAO.
Okay.
It's a community-governed entity where decisions are made collectively by its members, who typically hold tokens that represent their ownership and voting rights.
So it's like a digital democracy.
Exactly.
Sure.
And the beauty of it is that the rules and operations of the DAO are encoded in smart contracts,
Oh.
meaning they're automated and transparent.
Okay, so it's all out in the open.
It is. No more backroom deals or opaque decision-making processes.
But how do DAOs actually function in the real world? Give us some examples.
One of the most popular use cases is investment.
Okay.
You could have a DAO that pools funds from its members to invest in various crypto projects.
Interesting.
Token holders vote on which projects to support, and the DAO executes those investments automatically based on that collective decision.
So it's like a decentralized venture capital fund.
Precisely. Another example is a DAO that governs a decentralized exchange.
Okay.
Token holders can vote on things like trading fees, new listings, and platform upgrades.
It sounds like DAOs could potentially disrupt traditional organizations across ONI industries.
Absolutely. They offer increased transparency, community engagement, and the potential for greater efficiency at lower costs.
But like any emerging technology, they also face some challenges,
Right.
such as,
But one major concern is security.
okay,
If the underlying smart contracts have vulnerabilities, the DAO could be susceptible to hacks or exploits.
oh, wow,
There's also the question of legal and regulatory uncertainty.
right.
DAOs are still a relatively new phenomenon, and governments are grappling with how to classify and regulate them.
So it's a bit of a Wild West right now.
In some ways, yes, but that's often the case with groundbreaking innovations, right?
True.
It takes time for the legal and regulatory frameworks to catch up.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about another hot topic in the crypto world that your articles covered, stablecoins.
Yeah, stablecoins are fascinating
Yeah.
because they address one of the biggest hurdles to mainstream crypto adoption, I think.
You're talking about those wild price swings that we see with Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Yeah. Exactly. Stablecoins are designed to maintain a stable value, typically pegged to a fiat currency, like the US dollar, or a commodity like gold.
So how do they achieve that stability?
There are a couple of main approaches.
Okay.
Some stablecoins are backed by reserves held in traditional financial institutions.
Okay.
So for every stablecoin in circulation, there's an equivalent amount of fiat currency or another asset held in reserve.
So it's like a digital version of a banknote.
In a way, yes.
Eh.
Then you have algorithmic stablecoins,
Okay.
which use algorithms and smart contracts to adjust the supply of the stablecoin in response to market conditions,
Gotcha.
aiming to maintain its peg to that target asset.
That sounds a lot more complex.
It is, and algorithmic stablecoins have faced their share of challenges.
Right.
One of the biggest risks is that they could lose their peg if the algorithm fails, or if there's a sudden loss of confidence in the market.
So choosing a reputable and well-managed stablecoin is crucial.
Absolutely.
Mm.
But when done right, stablecoins can offer the benefits of crypto, like fast and borderless transactions without the volatility.
Right.
This makes them potentially suitable for everyday payments, remittances, and even more complex financial applications.
This is all so interesting.
It is.
But I'm realizing we've only touched on a fraction of what's happening in this world of Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about CBDCs or the broader impact on the global financial system.
Okay, we need to save some material for part 3.
Exactly.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, is there anything else you think our listeners should be aware of?
I think it's important to remember that both Bitcoin and Ethereum are constantly evolving.
Okay.
There are always new developments, upgrades, and challenges on the horizon. So staying informed and keeping an open mind is key to navigating this dynamic landscape, I think.
So the deep dive continues. We'll be back soon for the final part of our exploration into Bitcoin and Ethereum. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into Bitcoin and Ethereum.
It's amazing how much ground we've covered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from the nuts and bolts of blockchain to the potential of dApps and even the complexities of stablecoins.
Yeah, it really highlights just how much these two cryptocurrencies are shaking things up.
Yeah.
You sent over some articles that discuss their impact on the global financial system, and it seems like we're on the verge of some pretty major changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Bitcoin and Ethereum are challenging the very foundations of traditional finance. You know,
Right.
they represent a fundamental shift in how we think about money and value.
Okay, so help us understand this shift. What exactly are they changing?
Well, for centuries, our financial systems have relied on these centralized institutions like banks and governments
Right.
to act as intermediaries.
Okay.
They control the flow of money, they set interest rates and enforce regulations.
It's the system we've all grown up with.
Exactly. But Bitcoin and Ethereum are offering an alternative, a
Oh.
decentralized system where transactions can occur directly between individuals without the need for these intermediaries.
So cutting out the middleman.
In essence, yes. And this has some really profound implications.
No.
For example, with Bitcoin, you can send money to someone on the other side of the world instantly without paying those exorbitant fees or dealing with the bureaucracy of traditional remittance services.
Yeah, that's a huge game changer for people who rely on remittances to support their families.
Absolutely. And Ethereum takes this concept even further with DeFi.
Right.
decentralized finance,
Yeah.
which aims to recreate these traditional financial services like lending, borrowing, and trading, but on the blockchain.
We talked about DeFi earlier, but can you give us some more concrete examples of how it's already making a difference in people's lives?
Sure. Imagine a farmer in a developing country who needs a loan to buy seeds and equipment.
Okay.
Traditional banks might be completely unwilling to lend to them, or the interest rates might just be way too high.
Right.
But with DeFi, they could access loans from this global pool of lenders
Okay.
with potentially lower rates and more favorable terms.
That's incredible. It seems like DeFi could truly democratize access to financial services.
It does have the potential, I think. Of course, there are challenges. Scalability, regulation, and user education are all hurdles that need to be overcome.
Right.
But the innovation in this space is happening at an incredible pace.
Now, shifting gears a bit,
Hmm.
one of the articles you shared mentioned something called central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs.
Ah, yes. CBDCs are essentially digital versions of fiat currencies like the US dollar or the euro,
Okay.
issued and controlled by central banks.
So it's like a government-backed cryptocurrency.
That's a good way to put it. And many countries are exploring or even piloting CBDCs right now.
Why are governments so interested in this technology?
Well, I think they see CBDCs as a way to modernize their financial systems,
Yeah.
improve efficiency, and potentially gain greater control over monetary policy.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to distribute stimulus payments directly to citizens' digital wallets during a recession,
Right.
or track spending patterns in real time to better understand economic trends.
Wow. Sounds like a very powerful tool.
It is,
Mm-hmm.
but it also raises some concerns,
Yeah.
about privacy and government overreach.
Right.
If all of our transactions are recorded on a central database, it could give authorities unprecedented insight into our financial lives.
So how do CBDCs fit into this broader landscape of Bitcoin and Ethereum? Are they competitors or complements?
That's a really complex question, and there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
Some believe that CBDCs could coexist with and even benefit Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Okay.
They argue that CBDCs could act as a bridge between the traditional financial world and the crypto world,
Right.
making it easier for people to adopt and use digital currencies.
That makes sense. But others see CBDCs as a threat to the decentralized ethos of cryptocurrencies.
Exactly. They worry that governments could use CBDCs to monitor transactions, censor certain activities, or even crowd out private cryptocurrencies.
So it seems like the relationship between CBDCs and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum is still kind of unfolding.
Absolutely. It's one of the most fascinating aspects of this evolving landscape, I think. We're witnessing a fundamental shift in the global financial system, and it's really impossible to predict exactly how it's all going to play out.
It's exciting and a little bit daunting, honestly. But after this deep dive, I feel a lot more equipped to understand what's at stake.
That's the goal.
Right.
Knowledge is power, especially in a space as dynamic and rapidly evolving as the world of cryptocurrencies.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive, one thing is clear: Bitcoin and Ethereum have really ignited a revolution
Yeah.
that's transforming how we think about money, finance, and even the internet itself.
Yeah, I agree completely.
It's a future worth exploring and understanding. So, to our listener, we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the world of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Who knows what amazing discoveries await?
Great advice. Thanks for listening.